Hello, my name is Matthew, and we're getting towards the end of the year, and I thought it'd be fun to look back on the year and talk about and think about what I've read. And I scrolled through my own channel because I don't have a journal or I don't keep a record of what I read day to day. It's one of the really nice things about having a YouTube channel, a little channel, is the record kind of comes naturally. And so, according to my little channel, I have read 35 books. I know that doesn't include everything. There's a handful of books I didn't make videos on or comment on at all. I read lots of short stories, some plays, a lot of poetry. But the number of books, according to my channel, was 35 books, and I'm very happy with that number. I think it was a little bit more, maybe 40 books, something like that. I'm not including any of the Roman stuff, but I thought it would be fun to go through what I read over the year and what my thoughts are looking back. So, the first book that I read of the year, I think, was 100 Years of Solitude by Marquez. And I thought it was okay. I was really not enamored the way that I expected that I might have. And there was a buddy read or a read along going on at the time, and the excitement was really at its height. There were a lot of people talking about how it was this amazing book, and everyone that I ever hear about always talks about how it's just mind blowing, and I didn't really get that. I thought it was okay. Didn't have the feeling of wanting to jump into another Marquez book. And as far as a benchmark of how I feel about a book, whether or not I want to read more of the author is a really good indication for me. I read the Cossacks by Tolstoy, which I've read before, loved it. Looking back and realizing how many of the books that I've read are either rereads or just old. I don't think that I've read anything in the 21st century. Very little in the 20th century. So the Cossacks by Tolstoy, thumbs up. Tristana by Benito Perez Galdós. I also read The Poem of the Cid. My girlfriend is Spanish. She's Galician. I really still, every day, I want to read so much more Spanish literature. Recommendations are always welcome. For some reason, it seems hard to find Spanish literature, Spanish books that are translated into English and that I can find. So, suggestions, recommendations, please, I would welcome them. I read Vera or the Nihilists by Oscar Wilde. Can't go wrong with Oscar Wilde. The Castle by Franz Kafka. One of my absolute favorite novels. My favorite Kafka novel. It's horrifying and frustrating and hilarious. This is a book that has some of the best payoff laughs, that just these absurd, crazy, nightmarish situations that are haunting, that just make me roar with laughter. Just fantastic. Just one of my favorite novels. Um, I started Clarissa. I didn't count this as a read because I only read about a third of the book. Um, and I think my trouble was that I was reading it too quickly. It's considered one of the longest novels of um, the English canon, or just one of the longest novels in general. It's like 1,400 or 1,600 pages. I found it laborious and repetitive. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The writing is tremendous, and you really couldn't find a higher quality, a higher level of beautiful, engaging writing. Um, if I ever go back to it, I will um, be conscientious of um, my pace and would want to slow it down and um, break it up. Maybe read it um, closer to the idea of the time that it was written, when it was serialized and it was spread out. I think I might enjoy it and um, have time to kind of um, roll around, um, roll it around my head. Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh, the first um, buddy read or book club book that I had with Steve Donahue, which was such a big part of my year. One of my favorite parts of the year. um, and it was such a great pick for the first book to read with Steve, because the book was so confusing at first. It's a short thing, maybe 200 or 300 pages long, but um, left to my own devices, I probably would have um, moved on. But I really enjoyed it. I don't know how much more um, Evelyn Waugh I'm going to be excited to read. It didn't give me that impression, but it was good. Um, Around the World in 80 Days. Absolutely fantastic. It was the first time that I had read it, and it was a whirlwind of a novel. I still haven't gone off to read much more of Jules Verne, but so exciting, so fun. A page turner. I just loved it. Funny. Gulliver's Travels by um, Jonathan Swift. It's one of those things where I was so glad to go back and look at what I had read, because I only have the faintest impression of um, rereading the book. I'd read it before, and it's terrific. Um, but it, mostly I just think of like Gulliver was traveling. That's like what I think about. Like he had his travels, and he was had voyages, and um, really shouldn't have. It's not like he had these terrifically fortunate, fortuitous voyages. They don't go very well, but he kept going off on more travels. Shrek, children's book, Shrek by William Steig. Um, Great fun. Gave it to my niece. The Dark Knight Returns, graphic novel by Frank Miller. Started off um, in a spectacular fashion, and there was no story to back up this great premise. Batman retired, he's old, and now he has to put the cape back on and go off and rescue Gotham. There was just no story there. It turned into a mess. The artwork was great. The Barber of Seville by Buell Marquez. The French playwright, just funny and witty and quick. Really holds up. It was great. The Iliad by Homer, I would recommend it. A Farewell to Arms by Hemingway, probably my favorite Hemingway novel. I also read A Sun Also Rises, and I really regret not making a video on that, talking about that. It's my girlfriend's, one of my girlfriend's just absolute favorite novels. We read it together. For whatever reason, I didn't get to make a video about it, but there's an episode at the very end of it, because at the end of the novel, we're in Spain, and we've seen the running of the bulls, and everything is light and dizzying and fun, without consequence. And towards the end of the novel, the raucousness, the debauchery is like building, and there's a running of the bulls where consequences start toppling one on top of the other. And there's a moment where there's a man there's a man that dies, and Hemingway, it seems curious to me, but he takes a moment to separate from the main narrative to give a little backstory about this man that dies during the running of the bulls. And it was just like this detail, this heartfelt addition to a larger story. And I really remember that in this past reading. But it's my favorite Hemingway novel. I think A Farewell to Arms is what I would say is the best one. But The Hobbit, and then the Lord of the Rings. I read The Hobbit and I thought, I like these hobbits. I want to read more about the hobbits. I didn't entirely love the story in The Hobbit when there's like the adventure, but I like the hobbits enough to go back to Lord of the Rings, or start Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was probably my favorite novel of the year. I thought it was magnificent. It just entirely pulled me in to the story and the world. It was so engaging. The characters were fully realized. I cared about what was happening. I want to go back to that world. I want to read more about the Shire and whatever the place is called, but the Lord of the Rings world. So probably my favorite novel of the year, or thing that I read. Tons of Voltaire short stories. I made a handful of videos on Voltaire. Batman Year One, another graphic novel that I read with Steve. Much better than The Dark Knight Returns. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the novelization by Quentin Tarantino, which was terrible. A Discourse on the Method by Descartes. Don't have much to say about that. The Odyssey. This year I read the Iliad and the Odyssey. Couldn't be happier reading both of them so quickly in succession. Being able to recollect a lot more about what happened, and Odysseus and the whole thing. Swan and Love, which was a curiosity. It was just sort of excising the one chapter out of In Swan's Way, the first volume of Proust. It was an Oxford edition, and it was funny. Dune. I reread Dune. I read Dune last year. Steve and I read Dune again this year in anticipation for the big blockbuster Hollywood release. And I enjoyed it so much more the second time. And I hate to say it, but the movie really. I watched the 80s version, the David Lynch Dune, and then I watched the new one. And it's so unfair, but it really did spoil something. I remember watching both of them and thinking, this is all kind of stupid. I read it. I really liked it. Again, it's exciting. It's a lot of world building. Um, at some point, I might go on and read more of those Dune novels, but the movies didn't help. Eugenie Grandet by Balzac. Can't go wrong with Balzac. Um, Kingdom Come. So another graphic novel. This is Superman coming back. There's a whole new generation of superpowered beings. Um, the artwork was just astonishing. I thought the plot was a mess, so not great. Jacques the Fatalist by Diderot, one of my favorite novels. Diderot is one of my favorite writers, just funny and thought-provoking, um, surprising, original, just one of the most unique voices that you can find on a page. The Death of Superman, um, a graphic novel, the worst thing that I read this year. I thought it was um, atrocious. Everything about it, the artwork, it's a comic book. Um, the artwork just seemed, with the limited knowledge that I have about comic book artwork, but um, the artwork was unoriginal. The story, the characters, everything about it, it was missing everything that you would want in any kind of story. And it's supposed to be this grand climactic um, moment in Superman's life where he dies, and it's awful. It's just such a letdown. The Oedipus cycle by Sophocles, which was great. The Warden by Anthony Trollope, and I loved it. The next book I think is Barchester Towers, which is um, the considered masterpiece, or one of the great novels by Trollope. Next year, I'm so looking forward to reading that and enjoying it, and still having the characters in mind in this little world kind of fresh in my mind. So looking forward to that. Dracula by Bram Stoker, I really didn't like, and it's because the beginning is so great. Being in Transylvania, being in Dracula's castle, this person is trapped in a kind of Kafka-esque situation. He's a prisoner, and it's such a short portion of the entirety of the novel that all of the subsequent episodes, the rest of the story that goes along, felt like a letdown. Like I really just wanted to spend more time in this in Transylvania. And I remember I recorded my video on it, and at the end of the video, I thought, well, the way that I was talking about it made it sound like I loved the book, and actually, um, at the end of it, I thought, well, the way that I was talking about it, maybe I did. So I'm not sure. Um, all the Roman stuff, Notes from Underground, which um, I've read it a few times, but Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky. Um, it really has lost a lot of its magic for me. Um, right now, I'm reading Crime and Punishment and realizing like just how much more substantive the story is, the how much better Crime and Punishment is than Notes from Underground. I think it's a great starting point. It was a great premise, a really good length, um, but there's no story there. And when you start Crime and Punishment and realize um, you've read 150 pages, 200 pages, you're racing through the novel, and you've already read the same amount that you would have to complete Notes from Underground. Um, I remember thinking Notes from Underground was like so much shorter, and while I was reading it and thinking like, yeah, there's a lot of ranting, a lot of digression. It didn't quite do it for me. And Crime and Punishment, which will be another one of the best novels that I've read this year. Um, I'm imagining I'm gonna be reading it for the better part of December, uh, and I can't imagine reading anything better before the year rounds out. On the off chance that I somehow squeeze in Don Quixote by Cervantes, I imagine uh, Crime and Punishment will be one of the best books that I've read, the best books that I've read for the month. Um, and so, yeah, that's a kind of a round out idea of the books that I've read, and for the year, I feel really good about all of it, all the reading that I did with Steve, all the reading that I did with my dear girlfriend in Spain, all the reading that I've done with Andy and Daphne, my dear little roommates that have been climbing up the walls. um, and so, yeah, thank you for being a part of it. If you've been uh, reading along or watching the videos or anything like that. Um, and yeah, let me know what you think. You can leave a comment if you would like. And thank you for watching, and take care.